that lives in the Kirtland community. My mom deserves it, who lives up on Albuquerque's west side, and every resident in this community deserves that same type of care. So I would hope, Chief, that you would support this initiative. I think it's not important just to the fire department or to our rescue units, but to the residents of this community.
Councillor Arnold Jones.
Mr. President and Chief, a couple of questions for you. Am I to understand that the money that may have been, that was left over from the construction of Station 2 was supposed to go to the remodel for Station 27? What did that include?
Mr. President, Councilor Arnold Jones, we had intended on rescoping any remaining funds for the remodel of Fire Station 27. The council may recall that Fire Station 27 was recently deeded to the city of Albuquerque from Bernalillo County. The station is in need of about $300,000 worth of renovations. It includes a remodel of the living quarters, upgrade to the mechanical systems within the building, and just make it a better living facility for the firefighters that are living there.
Okay. So as I read this particular piece of legislation, what we have is equipment costs, but we don't have personnel costs. Do I understand that correctly?
Mr. President, Councilor Arnold Jones, the legislation, I didn't see the floor substitute, but it did include $400,000 for staffing, which is, we estimated it at what included operating expenses as well, and that's about spot on.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
So the last question is, you are going to stand up paramedic services at this station in 2 weeks. I have to ask kind of the obvious. Maybe the appropriate role is to delay this legislation. I don't disagree that having another unit is important, but I'm looking at the contracting period, and I'm just wondering if we're just jumping at this just a little fast, because I'd like to see the paramedic rollout happen, but it doesn't make this a bad idea.
Mr. President, Councilor Arnold Jones, we're really excited about what we're doing with the ALS expansion program and a much higher quality or much higher level of service that we're going to be able to provide to our citizens. I mean, really doubling that ALS capacity so that when one unit is tied up, they still get a paramedic that responds immediately.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I think with Councillor Garduno next.
Thank you, Mr. President. Chief, you know, I've always wanted to ride in a fire engine,
I can make that
but not while I'm having a heart attack. So, what stations now have rescue units? Just 3 or 4 of them.
Mr. President, Councilor Garduno, it'd be easy to tell you which ones don't. Stations 2, 4, and 10 do not have a rescue unit.
Okay. So, people are wondering how we're going to staff those units and whether or not they're available. What if we took 3 of those rescue units from varied parts of the city and put them in 2, 4, and 10? They would already be staffed. They would already be working, as I assume they are. Mm-hmm. And then convince those folks where those rescue units have come from, how wonderful the ALS system could be, and they could benefit from this great rollout that everybody's talking about. Meanwhile, 2, 4, and 10 would have rescue coverage. And they can go with the old system, which is ambulances.
Mr. President, Councilor Garduno, and what's the question?
The question is, why don't you move 3 rescue units from somewhere else in the city to those 3 that don't have it, so that we answer the questions that have been asked all night, and that is, why don't these folks have rescue units? What is the reason? And all I've heard is that someday we're going to get an advanced life support system that is going to be the technology of tomorrow, the best practices. I mean, all of these things that I've heard that haven't panned out for Reno, Nevada, for Ogden, Utah, for many of the places that I've looked into. So I don't know why we think that this is great if it's not great for everyone. So that's the question. Why don't we move 3 from somewhere else, then take the time to discuss with them how wonderful it will be to have a new system?
Mr. President, Councilor Garduno, we've done a GIS analysis of the best strategic locations for various services. And sometimes we're limited by the infrastructure of facilities and the inability of those smaller one-bay and two-bay stations to accommodate an additional unit. In fact, that's why we always want to build a 2 or 3 bay fire station for expansion purposes.
Two is not in that category.
Well, let me finish, please. And so, at any rate, you want that ability so that you can move units around when you need to. Given the existing resources where we currently have them, based on the limitations of infrastructure, are in their best locations. So it wouldn't be in anybody's best interest to move those resources today. And I disagree with you that the ALS expansion does work. It works in multiple cities. It is the best model in the United States. That's why we're doing it. We've done our homework. We've done the research. It's the right thing to do.
So have I. And I just want to make sure that we understand each other. 2 has the capability of accepting a rescue unit.
Mr. President, Councilor Garduno, Station 2 is a 3 bay station. 1 bay is currently occupied with an engine. 2 other bays are open.
So it would accommodate a rescue unit.
It would.
And as I said, there are rescue units in other parts of the city.
Mr. President, Councilor Garduno, there are 19 rescue companies in the city.
Okay. So one of those could be moved to Station 2.
Mr. President, Councilor Garduno, no, it couldn't. I mean, not if you want to have the best strategic location for existing resources, no.
Mr. President, I've asked this question multiple times, multiple ways, and I always have the same answer, and that is that they're best used everywhere else except here, where people are essentially asking us to have that service which they have not had for years, since 1954 in some cases. And Station 2 maybe could not accommodate a rescue unit at one point, but it can now, and I don't see why we're delaying it. I just find it not only unusual, but kind of insulting.
Chief, I mean, we funded the ALS and the whole rollout, and I mean, we gave approval to that, so it's not competing. This would, this rescue would not be, I mean, the one-time dollars as well as the staffing dollars are in this bill. They're not competing really necessarily with that. But did you mention something else that they might be competing with?
Well, Mr. President, you are competing with the staffing. If we're going to staff engines 2, 4, and 10 with paramedics, that's a total of 12 paramedics. So if you're going to take 8 away, which is the minimum, or it's the staffing amount for a rescue unit with overfill, you'll be delaying that implementation. So those resources would go there first, that's all.
The potential, I mean, we're not taking away from any other station right now. You're
No,
talking about
sir.
potential new hires like that. Okay, Councilor Benton is next.
So, Chief, there are 38 medic positions to fill each shift. We currently have 18 extra paramedics across 3 shifts. And we also have 17 more firefighters graduating from paramedic school in April, as you said. Also, at least according to our fiscal staff, even with us using the capital from this project for Rescue 2, for the service area Fire Station 2, as it was originally designated, there should be more than enough for what you need for 27 between Stations 2 and 7 and what's still going to be remaining, even under this bill. That's my understanding. So, I like Councilor Garduno, am somewhat puzzled. I understand what you're saying about the changes, the future changes, the things with the Affordable Care Act and so forth. Those will happen, and we'll deal with them. But there hasn't been a shortage of people interested in serving in these positions, and the bill does take care of the short-term labor need to fill the positions. So, I also look just in general terms, the average reversion of the general fund over the last 9 years has been $563,000. In 2012, it was $684,000. So, I hate for us to be claiming poverty in a situation like this.